Okay, I'm getting a message that we can start. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's program, which is hosted by our Women's Hemispheric Network on dual career couples. My name is Randy Melzi, and I'm a VP of Public Policy Programs and Corporate Relations at the ASCOA, and I'm based in New York City. It is my pleasure to welcome our three guest speakers. Juliana Sguerra is a managing director and partner at BCG Bogotá. She's a member of the financial institutions practice and currently concentrates on the use of analytics in financial services across marketing, sales, risk, and operations. Juliana is the first woman from Spanish South America region to hold that position, and she leads women at BCG in the region. Alexandra Aguirre is a partner at Morrison Foerster. Her practice is international mergers and acquisitions, joint ventures, cross-border financing transactions, and private equity investments throughout Latin America and in the US. And Giannina Marin is Deputy General Counsel for Hispanic America at American Tower. Giannina works closely with regional management and local teams in Hispanic American markets to advance commercial transactions while minimizing risk. Please put your mics on mute during the conversation so we can avoid any interference. I too will mute because I think you can hear the birds in my courtyard. We're going to begin with a short presentation from Juliana. She's going to discuss the findings of an ongoing BCG study regarding dual career couples, as well as key recommendations for companies. And Juliana will then have a moderated conversation with Alexandra and Giannina, who are going to share their experiences as part of dual career couples and also share insights in what has worked for them, for you, in terms of flexibility and support from your employers. And then we're going to open the floor for questions and answers from the audience. And so we encourage you to ask questions at that stage by sending a private message to my colleague, Ariana Molina. I will then call your name and you can ask a question by unmuting your mic. And so, Juliana, over to you. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. It's so important to have you with us.
Thank you, Randy. Let me see if I can do the sharing the content. 1 second. Okay. So thank you so much to the ASCOA for the invitation. As Randy said, my name is Juliana Sguerra. One thing that Randy didn't say is that I'm a mother of two. I have two girls. One is Martina, who's 10, and Maria Antonia, who's 6. And I'm part of what you would call the dual career couple. So I've lived the challenges that we will discuss today. And the session today will focus basically on how to make the workplace work for dual career couples based on a study that BCG has done recently, but also we're going to talk about a little bit of how things have changed this year when COVID-19 hit our economies. What we're seeing worldwide is that employees are more likely to be part of dual career households. We see that this is 60% of households in the US and Japan, and it jumps to 67% when you look at dual career households with kids. And in Australia and Canada, you see jumps to 70%. I tried to look for the numbers in LATAM, and while I didn't get the best numbers, I think this is also true, especially in Colombia. So the study BCG conducted was in one of our clients, and we wanted to see what was the impact of dual career couples in the leadership of the company. And when we looked at the vice president levels and above, we saw that only 25% of the leadership had an actual dual career couple or a single parent household. Our initial hypothesis was that we would see a similar type of composition or demographics in the other levels of leadership. And when we looked at the director and above, which was the next level, we saw that the percentage of single career households decreased to almost half. So the percentage of dual career couples almost tripled in director and above. And then when we looked at the next level, we saw that almost everyone belonged to a dual career couple. And when we see that everyone is juggling with the demands of a full-time employment and the logistics of managing a dual career or a single parent household. The reality is that these demographics are not likely to change over time. This is the workforce of the future and the leadership bench of the future. So that data highlights two very important things. The first one, it tells us that there is likely a significant gap between the senior leadership understanding of their employees' lives and challenges are different from their own. And second, it highlights that companies who want to win the war for talent and to win in the marketplace going forward will be those companies who can best attract, engage, and retain these dual career employees. When we looked at what were their expectations going forward, we found out another very interesting learning. We saw that there was a significant percentage of employees that were not interested in advancing to the next level in their careers. But this wasn't because they were not interested or wanted to be successful. It was because they were worried that they couldn't be successful at the next level, not because of their abilities or capabilities, but because they were not going to be able to manage the dual demands of work and home. And this was more interesting when we saw that the sentiment spike in two of the areas. You see the individual contributor and the director and above were higher than the manager. And the reason was that on the individual contributors, they were worried that their pay level wasn't able, they were not going to be able to manage their household burdens and the logistics because they were not going to be able to outsource those needs. And on the director side, on the other hand, they do have the resources to acquire the infrastructure that they need. But what they were worried is that the senior roles, they appear to be more demanding and inflexible than the ones that they were trying to manage. So winning the talent wars of the future requires that we find ways to support and encourage employees at all levels to move through the talent pipe. Companies will need to think carefully about the levels about what are the things that they offer to the employees to ensure that they can balance their lives and change their corporate culture. So what to do about it? If we see here, there's a gap between the current leadership and the future leadership. And what do we need to do? Basically, we need to understand and act. Here, we need the companies to survey their staff, survey their alums to understand what's going on and what are the key things that would manage them to stay. Talk about these issues openly. Get the white elephants on the table and discuss them because people really want to understand that companies care. Talk to the spouses. We've learned that if you talk to the spouses, you will hear very different points of view. and then do ethnography studies, understanding the real lives, points to issues in a very different way than just when they talk about them. So we, after the studies, BCG came up with 4 priorities for companies to act. The first one was changing how people work. And changing what people work basically means being flexible, understanding that leadership meetings cannot be earlier than 8 a.m. because people have to get their kids ready for school, they have to serve breakfast, and it's complicated for them to manage these very early schedules, and minimizing meetings also help. And then change the mobility requirements for career progression, recognizing that that being flexible and that not all couples are able to move. And then the promotion of the informal flex time, measuring what people do rather than when people do it or where they do it, becomes a very important thing. The second point is changing the culture, and is how the companies emphasize on heroes, on company heroes. They need to be very smart on selecting what are the roles they present as the heroes of the organization. The third point is change what a career looks like. And here, I think I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story, but people need to take a long-term and flexible view on what a career is. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon, and and here an example. When I joined consulting, I always thought to myself, I want to be a partner in 7 or 8 years, which was a relatively fast time to be a partner. But then I made it in 11, a little longer than what I had expected, but it was because in those years of excess in my timing, I had 2 kids, I had 2 maternity leaves of 6 months each, etc., etc. And then I moved to Colombia, and then I made partner. And now I see it back and I say, it's okay. And the expectation of being a partner in 7 years, maybe it wasn't for me or for women. So I think the organization needs to change the way they project what a career looks and what successful means within the organization. And then the fourth one, and is change the level of support we're giving the dual career households, facilitating different working arrangements, facilitating connectivity from home, which has been basically key now in with the COVID-19 challenges, helping mothers get breast milk when traveling, bringing on-site daycare to the offices, sick backup care, etc., helping the couple being able to handle the real challenges of having a family will definitely benefit from for the workforce. And now, while we don't have all the answer, what we do know is, and that it's important, is that the quantity of high potential dual career and single parent talent in the workforce, both female and male, will only continue to increase. And the companies that win going forward will be those who can best attract, engage, and retain these employees. And this is a topic that not all companies are yet addressing, and that is now knocking at their doors. And when I say knocking at their doors, is basically because, oh, give me 1 second that this is not changing. It's basically because COVID-19 hit us this year, And this has created even more challenges to the dual career couples that have more than that have kids, right? With schools being closed, homeschooling, younger kids, babies that need special attention, not having the traditional support that the couples have, either the grandparents, the nannies, everything really put the companies to a test. In the intensity of work seems to be getting greater and greater. The limits of work and rest, or work and household chores, are getting blurry, and there's a lot of work at the household that needs to be taken care, is putting a lot of challenges for the dual career couples. And here's where we're seeing the employers stepping up. um, and we've seen 4 things that are working right now. The first one is being empathetic, understanding that these challenges are real, that these challenges are impacting almost all families in that belong to the company. So proactively reaching out to the employees, asking how you can help. In some cases, you can help, but they knowing that you're thinking about it helps immensely, and at least it helps with their sentiment of belonging to the company. Then foster a culture that encourages the work-life balance. Invite managers and top leadership to lead by example. And here I have a very close to my heart example, and is after a few weeks of being in quarantine, we heard that consultants were not having time to prepare their lunches because they were on calls back to back. And basically, we instituted that from 1 to 2 people had no calls, had nothing to do because they needed to focus on getting lunch ready. So trying to implement these type of initiatives is good, because it ensures that everyone is um, at least being able to respond to the minimum needs of taking care of a family. The evaluation of performance based on output and not on input, on FaceTime, on how much time you're online, etc., makes a huge difference, and being vocal about it also helps. The third one is allow on accommodation, allow on flexible work arrangements. Now that in some economies they are reopening after COVID, schools won't be open for a while. So companies need to understand this and offer different arrangements for parents to manage this. And in some cases, others have asked for leaves of absence, so being flexible on and allowing and promoting these leaves of absence also helps employees relax a bit on their stress that COVID-19 is generating to them. And then the last one is the mental health support, offering this to employees to incentivize them being open about their struggles helps a lot, because we've seen a lot of people feeling a broad sense of stress and anxiety, and not being able to understand what's going to happen, when is it going to happen, can create an additional stress on people, and helping them to manage that will also be super important. So a few companies have already reacted, and they have taken actions on what they're going to do this year. One example is Facebook. They suspended usual performance ratings this year, and all employees will receive bonus if exceeded expectations for the first half of the year. They extended childcare benefits and new leave options for caregivers, and they allowed managers to reshuffle priorities on a case-by-case basis. So basically what they're doing is they're giving flexibility. And then Pepsi, um, Pepsi, eh, they have a mantra that they think that the most important thing when it comes to leading is people. And basically, they're giving an extra $1,000 per week to employees who produce, transport, and deliver products, and a full salary in case you get sick or you get to go into quarantine. So as you see, people, companies are already acting, and this is just two examples, but there are many more that are ensuring their employees are safe and feel the sense of belonging to the company because the company has supported them over this harsh time. And then I would like to say that this is not only a women's issue, but unfortunately, what we're seeing is that during COVID, women are taking most of the responsibility of the house, of the kids, of taking care of the daily lives and the chores of the house. And this is seen in many studies. There was a study recently published by the New York Times that said that more than 50% of men said that they were handling almost all the homeschooling duties of the house, and only 3% of women agreed. So while this shouldn't be a women's only issue, it kind of is. So what this could impact is the fact that some women um, might take a step back on their work, and we might lose some women from the workforce, and that's something that we wouldn't want to happen. So companies need to be aware of this, and as they create new support measures, they should have women in mind. And lastly, what I wanted to conclude and say here is that, well, employers and companies should help these dual career couples deal with the struggles and the challenges that they have. It is not only on companies or employers, it is also on the couple and the husband and the wife to have these discussions on how to handle things and how to support each other. And there are 5 best practices on how to deal with this. And the first one is the family is the team. The family needs to work together to ensure that uh, both members of the couple are successful in their career, but they also have to have honest discussions of what has to give at some point. Um, then the couple needs to learn to say no. There are things when you can say no, that it's not absolutely necessary that you join a meeting at 6 a.m. in the morning. It's not absolutely necessary that you join a call at 7 p.m. where you're giving dinner. Learning to say no, it's important. The third one is focus on strengths and interests. So balance these between the responsibilities based on this within the couple. If, for example, my husband does all the taxes, I don't do the taxes. So being able to balance these things helps a lot. And also outsourcing. If you're able to outsource some of the chores, the house chores or the kids chores, it is okay to do it. It's fine, and you should do it. Then the fourth one is schedule look ahead meetings. So plan ahead, making sure that you know who's going to be traveling when. So to have a very coordinated schedule that allows you to have full coverage. at least by one of the parents, and then define clear boundaries of time, and it's or time or space. Now with COVID, make sure that you have a place to work, that it's clear that that's the working space, and then there's the kid space, and there's the working time, and there's the kids time. So all about flexibility and limits. So that's how I'm closing my presentation. And now we'll move to the discussion panel.
Fabulous presentation, and still with you, Juliana, to moderate this discussion.
Perfect. So Alex and Giannina, it is a pleasure to be here with you holding this panel. Would be great if you could introduce yourselves. Alex, do you want to go first?
Sure. As Randy said, my name's Alexandra Aguirre. I'm a partner at Morrison and Foerster. On a personal level, I'm part of a dual career couple. My husband runs a hedge fund now and also works full time. And I have 3 children, ages 12, 10, and 7.
And Giannina.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, and thank you to Council of the Americas for having me today. So I'm Giannina Marin, as they were saying. I am Deputy General Counsel for Hispanic America for American Tower Corporation. And on the personal note, I have a 4-year-old who happened to turn 4 during COVID, which was particularly interesting and fun, and a 5.5-year-old. And then similarly, part of a dual career couple. My husband is also associate GC at a real estate developer here in the area, and also an active duty reservist.
Great, thank you so much. So in my view, and as I presented before, I believe everyone has to give in helping dual career couples succeed in the workplace and at home. It has to be a game where everyone puts an effort, the employer and the employees. So if it's okay with you, I think it makes sense to structure the panel in 2 sections. The first section will focus on understanding your experience and views on what things make a difference between companies that foster dual working couples and those that don't necessarily recognize the need for this. And in the second section, it would be great to hear your thoughts on what dual career couples can do better to manage the normal life challenges and now the COVID-19 challenges. So for the first section, and this is a question for the 2 of you, and Giannina, if you want to answer it first, what do you think are the 3 key things companies should do or offer to employees to promote the motivation and retention of dual career couples?
Sure. So, and in line with, I think, some of the stuff that you were saying, so I would say, first, I mean, you definitely have to start with the basics. I think you have to offer that flexibility, which I think doesn't always mean the same thing for different people. I think that could mean at least 2 examples. It can mean hours, right? It can mean that some people might need to just physically leave the office at an earlier time than others, or might need to be able to come in a little bit later. It's interesting. You mentioned not scheduling meetings before, an in-person meeting before 8 a.m. I mean, some people might need to be dropping their children off at school at 8:10 a.m. So they're not even going to be able to make it for the 8 a.m. meeting. So definitely considering those flexibilities. And then also things like being able to work from home. I mean, for some people, just the flexibility of working from home 1 or 2 days a week can allow for significant flexibility because, we have a lot of people from Latin America on the line. Some people commute for an hour and a half or 2 hours a day. So even cutting back a day or 2 can offer, significant abilities for people to do that. So I think offering the flexibility for sure. A second one, in line with the culture aspect that you were saying, I think it's not just about offering the flexibility, but it's about creating a culture where it is encouraged by management to actually take advantage of the flexibility and make it not a women's issue. I mean, it is important, I think, for not just women to be using flexible hours to help pick up their child from school sometimes in the afternoon, or even from daycare because it happens to close at 5 or 6, but for men to be also doing that. Because if we offer flexibility, but only women are always the one doing that or taking advantage, then ultimately what can happen is that the men are still the ones who are seen as the ones putting in the extra mile, but maybe women are not. So making it a couples issue or an employee issue rather than a women's issue. And then third, in line with the rest, encouraging thoughtful consideration. And I think, again, it comes with that part of the managers and the people setting the meetings. And I think it's very difficult. It's easy to say, don't schedule meetings at 8 a.m. or don't schedule meetings after 5. But sometimes, unfortunately, if you work as part of a regional team, for example, you know that there's people in 5 different time schedules and 5 p.m. or noon or 8 a.m. might be the only time that works. But then, do little things like, for the people who are in the office, for example, or if you're actually doing it in the office, encourage people to just be able to dial in, because if it only works at 8 a.m. for physical people in Miami, then encourage those people that could actually show up to be able to take it from home rather than physically being at the office and blowing up their whole morning or their afternoon, for example. So just creating that thought of kind of consideration and the fact that other people might be being affected.
Great, thank you. Alexandra, would love to hear your thoughts on this.
Sure. I think that Giannina covered the main points of what people, we constantly hear that people want flexibility. I think that's the main issue that, parents and especially dual career couples, require to try to juggle everything at once. So definitely, I think flexibility is the main issue. And I also agree about the tone from the top, let's put it that way, because it's very difficult to be in a work environment when, your boss is in the office, all hours of the day, and, they take no vacation, they work 24/7. And then, when that's the norm and that's what people expect, it's very hard to, come from a place where you need more flexibility. So I think it's very important for there to be the tone from the top at every corporation for it to promote flexibility and to promote this new standard of people, as long as you deliver, it doesn't matter, where you deliver it from or how you deliver it. And I think, that's one of the good things that have come out of COVID, that a lot of companies have started to realize that, people can work from home. That things still get done even when people aren't physically in the office, and that things are getting done in a different way and at different times, but they still get done. I mean, that being said, I also have to add that, an employer can't solve all your problems, and there's always limitations, especially in a field like mine when, the demands, don't come from me, they actually come from the clients or from the bankers. And the deadlines are not set by me, they're set by the client. So at the end of the day, I have no problem, where people do their work or when they do it, as long as it gets done by the deadline. So there's also a point where you have to figure out in your own, life, how you take care of how you're going to outsource. I love also the outsourcing term, how are you going to outsource some of these things that need to get done? Obviously, everybody understands that there's emergencies once in a while, but you always have to understand that it depends on your job. There's only so much flexibility that certain jobs can give you as well.
Right. And on two things that you've said, I wanna quickly give a comment, and is Giannina said that this shouldn't be a women's issue, and I think that's correct. And we've seen the largest banks being successful at supporting this dual career couple model by offering the same benefits to both genders, right? Maternity and paternity. And I had one of their COOs asking me, Juliana, do you think which parent doesn't want to go to the Christmas show of their kids, both the dad and the mom? So we should give these benefits to both of them. And that's the way to make it a better balance between genders. And I think that was a very important point that Giannina touched on. And then Alex, your point on leading by example, that the top level should show how they live their lives and how they balance their lives, so that others are encouraged by that as well. So those 2 points I think are super important, and they're not necessarily ingrained in all the organizations. Now, the next question, given the new challenges of COVID and the fact that it's unclear how long will social distancing last, what are the things companies can do to support dual career couples? Besides flexibility, which I think you also mentioned.
Did you want me to go first again? Sorry. Okay. So I think in the COVID scenario, I mean, there's really not so much that companies can really do, right? Because if you were, if you were already outsourcing and you can't outsource, or the school is closed and the school is not closed, I mean, there's limited amount of things that the companies can do other than, kind of that compassion and understanding piece that I think you mentioned in one of your slides. I mean, I'll say for one, I mean, American Tower has been incredibly communicative to everybody of, we get you, we understand where everybody is. Actually, today, something as small as today's splash screen when you go on our website is our several members of like our executive board or senior vice presidents and executive vice presidents just kind of sitting at random places in their house working. And it brings you together, that concept of, we all get it. We have been on calls where people of all levels have had a child walk in because, with their pants down, or, the crayon broke, and little things, or even, older children because the iPad broke. And so it's that, I think at this point, it's that level of understanding of, we all have children, we're all going through the same, and let's focus on, let's get it done. You might need to finish it later because in the middle of the day, at some point, you might have to take care of your child, focusing on that output rather than the input, but letting people know that it's okay if things go a little bit wrong, because they just are going through, it's inevitable in this situation.
Great. And Alex, you want to add something?
Well, I mean, flexibility obviously is key, and I think that a lot of employers are understanding that given the situation with children, there may not be a possibility for people to return to work if there's no schools. There may not be summer camps. There may or may not be childcare. So I think there definitely is going to have to be a flexibility as far as to how long, they're going to allow people not to be in the office, on a daily basis. Also, I think what's important, which you mentioned, and I think, Morrison and Foerster are doing a great job, is a lot of mental health support. They're doing, check-ins, have, specialists available for people to talk. They understand, that this is, a hard time for everybody, a very stressful time. They're doing a lot of groups for people to connect as far as, parents with elementary school kids, parents with middle school kids, if they want to connect with each other in these days. And I think that's another thing, that companies can definitely help their employees with, to keep up, even if you don't have mental health, just more connectivity among employees of large firms, I think is really helpful this day and age.
Great, great. And one last question, and just for Giannina, and is Giannina, have you been pushed to make career-related decisions because your work setting didn't allow you to manage your family or professional responsibilities as you wanted to?
Well, I know why you're asking me this. And so it does lead back to, so I used to be at private practice before I joined American Tower. And, you know, most definitely one of the reasons why I moved in-house, I think a lot of us on the line are consultants and lawyers, and you know, you get those calls, you know, every third or fourth day with the person offering you to go somewhere. And you know, every time I'd said, no, not now, I'm not interested. And then it began to become very apparent that I was having very little flexibility. There was, you know, I didn't have that flexibility to go home, even if I didn't have work to do, or even if I was just sitting there waiting for a document to come in that might come in 3 hours later, that I could very much do for home, or even go to my house across the street and return to my office later, because there was very much this physically be present in the office mentality. And so it became apparent to me that, you know, while I could kind of do it for as long as possible, at a certain point, if I wanted to be able to live a life that was going to be reasonable to me and that I was going to be able to manage everything, I was going to have to make a move. And after one particular waiting for a document for 3 hours incident, when a recruiter happened to call in the morning, and that was the guy that was recruiting for American Tower, and here I am now. So I think for sure it can definitely make people leave an environment that they might otherwise like, but just because it's otherwise somewhat life incompatible.
Okay, so this shows the importance of setting up a strategy to retain dual couples, right? Because they kind of lost you, and that can happen in other cases as well. Alex, we're gonna move to the second section of what we as a couples can do to manage better the challenges of a dual couple working. What would you say are the 3 things that you have put in place in your daily life to be able to manage your work-life balances?
Well, I mean, I think like every other dual career couple, it's been very tough. I think even before COVID, we all felt like we were juggling, you know, 10 balls up in the air at once. And then, you know, when COVID hit, all of a sudden, you know, they throw like 3 balls more at me, like I have to become my children's teacher, you know, and there's nobody to clean the house or cook or anything else. And then, so I have one hand tied behind my back and 5 more balls to juggle. And that's when you have to realize that the only other person that's going to help you juggle at that point is your spouse or your significant other. So it really comes to a point that you have to work together to try to, you know, take on the additional load that came in after COVID. And I think you have to understand that maybe, first of all, I think you have to prioritize what's important to you, because you have to understand that not everything's going to get done. It's impossible. It was very hard even before COVID. And now with the additional load, there's just a lot more things that may not get accomplished. And you just have to prioritize what's the most important thing to you and your spouse. And I think it's also very important to check in with each other, you know, because even during these, what has it been like, it's a blur now, 11 weeks, 12 weeks, it's been up and down. I think at the beginning, there were weeks that I think I was having a harder time dealing because I had more on my plate. And then the other weeks you feel that he's the one that's more overwhelmed because he had more on his plate from work. So I think it's also important to check in with each other and realize and be more empathetic that when you see that they have more on their plate from other areas, you know, take in more of the additional load from, you know, the home area and vice versa. I think that that's pretty much the only thing you can do. And obviously take it one day at a time, because right now I think what stresses people out the most is the uncertainty of what the next day is going to bring and how long this is going to last and how you're going to deal with it. So really just taking it one day at a time, I think has helped me at least.
Great. And Giannina, do you want to add to Alex's suggestions?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so for me, I think I try to, I would say I have a three-prong approach, you know. So on the company perspective, I've always tried to maintain like a large degree of connectivity and presence and delivery. And so, I mean, right now I would say, you know, it depends. Some days are better than others, for example. And even in normal life, you know, I try to always be very, very connected and almost deliver that, you know, can you stick your head out of the office and wave at me? Feeling, even if I'm not there. So I'm one of those people who is horribly connected to my phone, which is a downside, but I will always at the very least try to acknowledge, hey, I received your email. I am on this. I will get back to you. And I think at a certain point, even if there is sometimes a delay in being able to get to this because you're having that bad week where the nanny called in sick, which happened today, and everything else went wrong, people know that you are on it. And I think that degree of knowing is very helpful from kind of the company, my client perspective. From my internal perspective, I very much agree the concept of planning. I mean, we have a plan and then we revise the plan and we very much try to kind of do that check-in of the constraints of each other. And like I was saying, I mean, we had to very much do that today because last night my nanny called me to let me know that she'd like fallen and has thrown out her back and she couldn't come in. And so last night, my husband and I were sitting there, calendars in hand, trying to figure out how we were going to go about the day, which we did with about 60% success. But I'm sitting here, so that's pretty good. And the last time, you know, is the last thing I would say is compromise and acceptance. You know, I think a lot of times, and as women, you know, there's this whole movement sometimes of you can have it all. I don't really know that you can have it all exactly the way you can have a lot of aspects of different things. And I think for me, part of that is accepting that I'll do everything the best that I can. I'm not necessarily going to be able to read a book to my son today because I had to do 3 other things and I had to work and I just couldn't read him the book. And that has to be okay that my husband read him the book. Or, you know, that I had to call somebody and say, hey, can we, you know, move a call to tomorrow because suddenly something came through. Just a little bit of kind of that mental acceptance that you kind of do your best, but you just can't also make yourself crazy.
I completely agree with that. So I think we're running out of time for our conversation, but I'm going to open up for questions. Ariana, do you want to take the lead here?
Yes, we can call Carolina, who had a question.
Yes, hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Great, you're also going to be hearing my children in the background. Hi, everyone, this is Carolina Costa, and just full disclosure, like so many of us here. So I also do a career. I am the head of government relations for Latin America for the RELX Group, multinational based out of London with 30,000 employees, present in 14 countries. And prior to that was actually a consultant. So then I went in-house, and my husband is the one of the lead trade negotiators for USTR, the United States Trade Representative. And we have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. So, and we're here in Washington. So you can imagine very demanding jobs with 2 small children. This has been just a wonderful discussion, very inspiring in so many ways. And it's a question and a comment. First question is, I've been looking into this issue more closely of, you know, the challenges of dual career couple. And have some ideas into, just present that in a more systematic way within my own corporation. And obviously, it's traditionally, I think, an issue that HR would take the lead. But if any of you have any other ideas as to, which other, traditional departments or which other areas of a large multinational should be involved into promoting a more systematic conversation with regards to the challenges that we are going through right now. So that's the question. And the comment is, Randy and the team, again, this is wonderful. Perhaps the second conversation here should be with the men. I would love to hear some of the men talking about the challenges that they are going through as dual career. I do offer up my husband for the challenge. Thank you so much.
We actually had before you answer, in Mexico City last, I think it was December last year, we did have a power couple on stage, and they talked about how they manage their lives and their careers. So that's online. But yeah, thanks for the suggestion, Carolina.
No, thank you.
So Carolina, I'm going to offer my perspective coming from a consulting firm, and I think this issue needs to be addressed from the leadership. Basically, this work-life balance and how to address the issues, at least at BCG, are being addressed by leadership to ensure that they have the power and the volume that is needed to ensure that all the organization gets the message. I don't know, Alex and Giannina, if you have your thoughts on that.
Thank you, Juliana. No, I agree. It has to be top down for sure.
I agree. I mean, you can end up delegating in the end, the implementation to HR and the creation of committees and all of that thing. But if it doesn't come from the top, it's never going to be effective.
Yeah, we're seeing the same at ATC. I mean, it very much seems that the leadership has very much bought into the concepts and is seeing it and is very much all about that.
Next question.
Thank you.
No, I'm going to ask a question myself, Randy. I think all of you mentioned the work environment, and I have a question about how can we manage when we see other people in the office maybe staying late or maybe having different different work schedules than we can do. How do you manage that, right? So how do you manage maybe that others are not going to see you sitting there in the office? I think, Giannina, you were mentioning some of that when we talked earlier. So I was wondering what your thoughts were on that.
I mean, from my end, I send a lot of emails. It might be silly, but I do a lot, and I'm sure a lot of the people on this phone do a lot of early working and do a lot of late working. Somebody, actually, one of the men at my company once told me that it's not the size of the egg, but how much kind of the hen kind of sings. And they told me in Spanish when the hen is laying the egg. And so, if people don't know that you're doing it, they might not know that you're working. So, I mean, I think my boss would very much tell you that I am known for sending emails at 6:15, 6:10, 6:40 a.m. in the morning because I wake up early and I start to work. I don't make up emails, but if there's definitely some, agreements that I'm working on at the time and I'm getting it done, I don't hold the email and send it at 9. I definitely let it fly at 6 a.m. And I've been successful at creating a feeling that I'm working at 6 a.m. and that I'm working at 11 p.m.
I think For me, I have a different approach, and is when I was having my first kid in New York. There was a period of time that I was leaving the office at 3:30, going picking her up at daycare, bringing her to the house, giving her to the nanny, and then I would restart working. And some people at the office would say, "Are you going to lunch?" And I was like, "No, I'm leaving the office. Bye." And it took a lot of internal strength and confidence of the work that I was doing to be able to do that and fight against that culture. But after a few months, they got used to it, and they knew I was able to respond to my responsibilities. So I think I've built a thick skin and just focused on what I'm doing rather than what other people are doing.
Alexandra?
Oh, I mean, well, I'm actually more of Giannina's approach as well. I mean, you have to be tough and you just leave the office, because otherwise you just won't see the children. And, I think by now the same thing, people know that I'm always online, same thing. I wake up early because of the kids, and I'm already sending out emails and responding. I actually get a lot of work done early in the morning, even before I leave, because I have a long commute. So in order to, not get into rush hour, I just get a lot of work done very early, go into the office, leave, and then, spend some time with the children and then continue late at night. And I agree. I mean, now when people see that they're sending emails and you're still responding like all the time, they start getting past the fact that you're not physically in the office when they see that you're still paying attention to the, the emails and the documents and everything coming in and out.
And also, I would say that it's important that you realize that everybody has a different way of working. So some people like to be on 24/7, and other people have limited amounts of time. And some women like to go home and see their kids at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but they get their work done. So it's really important for them not to judge everybody by the terrible standard of FaceTime. So another question. I think we have time. We have 4 minutes.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to share with you. This is Julia, just in case.
Thank you, Julia. Tell people where you are and what you do.
Okay, I am in Peru, in Arequipa, Peru. I work for a mining company. I'm vice president of corporate affairs, and I have been working for the same company for the last 22, almost 23 years. I'm a mother of 3 girls, and you will be surprised to hear they are now 25, 24, and 18, sorry, she just turned 18, my youngest. And I wanted to tell you that I wish I could have had these discussions 20 years ago when I started working, because my life had been totally different. I do believe that it's possible to hold any position in the work arena when you have the passion and you want to try it hard. But now there is a lot of support by companies, organizations, and spouses to help raising children. So take advantage of that. It's feasible, it's doable, and no matter which style of work you have, you'll achieve it. Okay, so I think it's very important for especially women to convey the message with example to other people and to other girls and women, so that they are able to achieve it as well. I say I regret I haven't heard this before, because I did suffer a lot. I used to travel overnight to New York, be back, okay, or to Santiago, just to make sure that I was at home with my children. And it's important that now we have a lot of other media to be in contact, and it's totally different. So let's take advantage of that, and I'm able to help whenever you need. Okay, that's all.
So everybody's been remarkably quiet. So we're going to end the program 2 minutes early, and everybody has some extra time. So very, very much to our panelists today. And we look forward to staying in touch, having you back for another program. And just Just tune in, be well, take care of yourselves, your spouses, your children, and your employees, and be well, be resilient. Gracias a todas. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, Randy.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
This was wonderful.
Thanks.